Historical project is neat because the children are able to research what might to some people seem like a very obscure topic that is very meaningful to them and has interesting connections to Canadian history, both local, provincial and national.
My name is Andrew Robichaud and I'm a grade 8 student at Ridley College in St. Catharines, Ontario. I was born in the Maritimes and moved to Ontario when I was in grade 6. Ontario is a great province and there are really nice people here, but I think it's important to keep my maritime roots. I have a lot of family and history on Prince Edward Island, and this project is a great chance to understand who I am, where I come from, and if those before me made a difference in our Canadian way of life.
So Andrew, you know that this term we're doing a Heritage Fair project, and it's really a wonderful way to understand Canadian history. And there are a wide range of topics that you can choose from. Really any kind of connection to Canadian history is suitable. So what are you looking to do your project on?
I want to do my project on my great uncle, the Honorable Daniel J Macdonald.
My great-uncle Daniel J Macdonald was a World War II hero and Minister of Veterans Affairs for Canada. I want to learn more about him.
Oh, that's amazing, because sometimes when you have a personal connection, that makes it all the more worthwhile. Because when you're doing a project like this, you can really go far with something that you're interested in, and hopefully with a family connection, you'll be very interested in this. I wish you good luck in it.
My first stop is at Matthews Library at Ridley to research more information on World War II. Now I need to go back to the Maritimes to interview some people and visit the national headquarters of Veterans Affairs Canada, which is located in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island.
Ten years have gone by, they went by so fast. Seems like it was yesterday, it was somewhere in my past. I'm walking down a road that was once strange to me.
Just arrived in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, and it feels good to be home. It's in the middle of January, and I'm in front of the old PEI homestead.
It's this home in Boswell, PEI, where my great-uncle, war hero, farmer, family man, politician, Daniel Joseph Macdonald was born. The son of Dan Lockey and Elizabeth Macdonald, Daniel grew up with 5 brothers and 1 sister. At the age of 20, Dan bought his own farm across the road from the homestead and continued to help with the family farm. In 1940, Dan enlisted in the Prince Edward Island Highlanders, and then moved to the Cape Breton Highlanders in 1943. Soon he was a sergeant of the front line in the Allied campaign in Italy. Dan was wounded twice in World War II, first in the action during an assault on the Gothic Line when he was wounded in the right leg. He returned to the front line after a few weeks. In December 1944, during the Battle of Senio River, a shell exploded in front of Daniel, wounding him for a second time, this time very seriously. His injuries resulted in an amputation of his left arm and left leg. It was also during this explosion that his chest was injured, but Dan always carried a little Bible over his heart. The shrapnel deflected off the little Bible that saved Dan's life. After a lengthy time in hospital, Dan was sent home. When Dan returned to Prince Edward Island, he was greeted to a hero's welcome. His homecoming party featured a young girl by the name of Pauline Peters, who sang "Mother, Thank You for the Bible Who Gave," though at the time she was unaware that a little Bible saved Daniel's life. It was the first time Dan set eyes on Pauline, and he really liked her. They ended up sitting together at the party. Dan later married Pauline in 1946. In spite of being seriously disabled, Dan had a dream of living a full and productive life. There was nothing that Daniel could not do. He cleared the land that he bought before the war, and he found an old carpentry book and taught himself how to build a house. Daniel and Pauline raised 7 children and managed a successful farm. Daniel also had many charitable efforts. He was approached to run for political office in the early 1960s. First elected in 1962, he spent 10 years as the MLA. He held the post of Minister of Agriculture and Forestry. Here I am at Province House, home of Confederation and the PEI Legislative Assembly, where Dan first started his career. In 1972, Dan ran as federal MP for his riding of Cardigan. He won his seat and was appointed Minister of Veterans Affairs by Pierre Trudeau. As Minister responsible for Veterans Affairs, his portfolio included the Canadian Pension Commission, the Pension Review Board, the War Veterans Allowance Board, and the Bureau of Pension Advocates. He also served as the Canadian agent for the Commonwealth War Graves Commission.
And at the break of day you sank into a dream.
Them days, possibly even more than today, the rights that we as a people had inherited it. Your right to speak, your right to practice your religion, your right to marry who you choose. This stuff seemed to be pretty well circulated. It's very evident to us that we're going to lose them rights if the man that was creating all this great disturbance, who was known as Adolf Hitler, got his way. People would do and countries would do that he took over as he desired, which was not very palatable. And the word that we got back, how he was using the women and the children of all other nations. So we felt we had every right to defend our rights that we had inherited.
Like so many Canadian families, all of Daniel's siblings contributed to the war effort. Roland, my grandfather, served in the Navy on the HMCS Spring Hill and 2 auxiliary ships. Clarence and Mary worked on the home front in Montreal, Clarence working in munitions. Ronnie served in the Army and was shot just days before Daniel was wounded. Walter, also in the Navy, served on the destroyer the Sioux and was there on D-Day. Young Leland stayed home to help on the farm.
And carry me home down the highway of heroes, people above with the flags flying low. Carry me softly down the highway of heroes, true patriot love, there was never more.
After Dan's death, his aid to veterans was shown with the dedication of the National Headquarters of Veterans Affairs Canada being named the Daniel J Macdonald Building. I'm going to be meeting with the Senior Research Advisor for Canada Remembers Division of Veterans Affairs Canada, and John Braho, author of Daniel's biography. Dan did a lot to help veterans and their families. He revised pensions and allowances that made many changes to support veterans emotionally, physically, and financially.
Yes, Andrew, you're the first person that we have opened the case for, other than to do work, since I've been involved with this display. And
Today, I will be given access to Daniel's World War II uniform, medals, and other artifacts that are on display in the lobby of Veterans Affairs Canada.
The campaign medals he would have been entitled to, cap badge with the Cape Breton Highlanders. This is very interesting. It's the military missile. That was in his tunic pocket when the shell fragments took off his arm and leg. And you can see where one of the fragments actually went into the pocket and tore the corner out of the book. Another inch or so that way, we might not be having this conversation. If you want to just gently take it out, you can say you actually held it.
It's like firm, you can see there.
Yeah. Any questions, Andrew?
I think I'm good.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I was just wondering, why did you write the book?
I wrote the book for, I suppose, a number of reasons. I was a great admirer of Dan. I worked with him for a total of 8 years when he was a federal cabinet minister. And he was the sort of person that, a lot of people admired, and he was someone I thought his story should be told. The other reason, I guess, that I thought his story should be told is here in this building, the Daniel J Macdonald building, enough time has passed that a lot of people didn't even know who he was. And I think that he was one of those particular heroes of Canada, of World War II, and it was a story that really deserved to be told. Besides that, he was a very colorful character and a very interesting character.
So, John, why do you think that Trudeau gave Daniel the state funeral?
I think it was a matter of respect. As you know from your research, there are very few state funerals, especially for cabinet ministers. The first one, or the last one before Dan, was about, I think, 15, 16 years before, and I don't believe there's been any for a cabinet minister since. I mentioned in the book that Jim Coots, who was an advisor of Trudeau, told me that Trudeau had a great admiration for Dan because he was very honest and he was somebody who never used his disability sort of as a prop. He was just Dan Macdonald, the farmer from PEI. And he and Trudeau were very, very close.
It is not without a lingering sense of shock that I rise today to speak of my friend and colleague, the Honourable Daniel Joseph Macdonald. Serving Canada's veterans was not just a job to him, not just an official responsibility. It was a passionate commitment in which he became totally and sometimes emotionally involved. He was, in my judgment, and in that of many others, the best Minister of Veterans Affairs Canada has ever had. He was known as a man who was true to himself, true to his friends and to those he served, true as well to the highest ideals of public service. For all that, he was a man without pretense, never seeking to appear to be anything but what he was. A man who was proud of his family, proud of his farm, proud of his island and his country. His approach to the problems of government was always simple, but never simplistic. Many a sophisticated expert in Ottawa, taking a distant and theoretical approach to the problems of agriculture, or of maritime development, knows what it meant to have his theories shattered by the sheer weight of Dan's common sense and practical wisdom.
And why do you think that people are so drawn to Daniel?
He would always find a way to adapt, improvise, and overcome. Whether it was building the house, building the barn, shingling the roof, falling off the roof, getting back up again as soon as he got his wind back. Whether it was tying his own shoes with one hand, try it sometime. Whether it was putting on his own tie and making a proper military knot with one hand, try it sometime. He would find a way to make these things happen. And he wouldn't stop until he figured it out. And he didn't expect anybody else to help him either.
And he had a great desire to help people that have problems. And that was actually a very common thread in all of those brothers, his brothers and his sister. They were very, very kind and very generous and always wanting to help people. People would come to my father knowing that he would do something, he would try something. As long as it was all above board and legal and moral and ethical, he would do anything he could think of within his power to help people. But he had this way of motivating people as well. What are you going to do to help yourself? So he would then link up with and become part of the team of you trying to help yourself. And he would be kind of the go-between for all of that.
Daniel died in 1980 at the age of 62 while he was still in office. He was granted a state funeral. Daniel is only one out of 31 people in Canadian history granted a state funeral.
Tell me about the first time you met Daniel.
The first time I met Daniel was 21st of July, 1945. They had a homecoming party for him in Elmira, not far from Bothwell. And I was asked to sing a song there. So I chose to sing, "Mother, I Thank You for the Bible You Gave." But I didn't know at the time that, you know, he had a large scar over his heart where the Bible, a bullet was deflected by that Bible that was in